Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Sarah Smith, and you're listening to Raw Intentions. Hello, it is a beautiful morning here in Denver, Colorado, coming at you live. It is Wednesday, August 7th. I've had such a fun week here. I've recorded lots of podcasts, gotten to catch up with friends because I still live here. So it was fun chatting and catching up with everyone. I did a little girls' night painting sesh with a bunch of my girlfriends that live here and met some new friends, which was so fun. And I just love being a woman. Like getting to giggle and paint and drink wine and eat snacks, make new friends. I love us. We're so cool. But anyways, before we get into this week's episode and this week's special guest, I will give my little elevator pitch just in case this is your first time listening to our podcast. So like I said in the intro, my name is Sarah Smith, Sarah with an H, Smith with a Y. I am from Madison, Alabama originally and currently living in Breckenridge, Colorado, which is about an hour and a half away from where we are sitting right now. I'm 29 years old. I graduated Auburn in 2017 with a double major in rehab disability studies in Spanish. I was originally going to do bilingual occupational therapy, but of course nothing goes to plan. Before I took the GRE, I think I bought the GRE for Dummies book, and that's about as far as I got for grad school. I started making handmade jewelry my senior year. I was just incredibly broke, and I was waitressing at Texas Roadhouse all through high school and college, and it just wasn't quite paying the bills. So started making jewelry, necklaces for myself and my friends in college, and then started selling to local boutiques, doing pop-ups, making necklaces for more girls. And what started as just a little side hustle out of my college bedroom floor has blossomed and shaped itself into something that I could not have even dreamed of. 7, 8 years ago when I started back in 2016. But it is still my full-time job to this day. It's called Raw and Rebellious. That's at raw_rebellious on Instagram. If you don't follow us, you definitely should. And we actually don't even do jewelry anymore. We do hats, we do prints, we do lots of apparel, crop tops, hoodies, that kind of thing. We do shoes, collaborations, meetups, pop-ups. Raw and Rebellious has definitely taken on a life of its own, which I love. And I think all of that is due to our community. We've got this fabulous community that we've cultivated over the last 8 years and done it in a very organic, authentic way. And that's really what pushed me to start this podcast. I wanted a lifeline to that community that I DM and talk to and meet at pop-ups every single day. And it's been so much fun. Obviously, I love to hear myself talk or I wouldn't have a podcast. So I do tons of solo episodes where I yap about just the things that you move through in your 20s with friends, with love, with moving, with finding yourself. And it's been really fun moving through life and sharing it with y'all and hopefully helping people as they move through similar things. But my favorite part is getting to interview guests. So we have tons of incredible people come on and share their story, both friends in my personal life and people that I've admired and been inspired by from afar. And that brings us to our guest this week. This week we've got Jordan Lewis. So Jordan and I are new friends. We connected through other mutuals in Denver, and she is the founder of Link by Lou, which is like the OG permanent jewelry company that she started years ago. And this was such a fun episode to record. We met for the first time in the last month or so. We both live in Summit County and got some non-alcoholic mocktails and chatted for, I think, 3 hours. And we have so much in common. She is like a soul sister to me. And it was so much fun, not only getting to know her previously, but also doing this podcast together. I feel like I learned so much about her business, about what drives her, and how she's become such a success. So super inspiring. We talk about starting a business from the ground up, the importance of a resounding why. We talk about self-care and spirituality. We talk about making mistakes and how you grow and learn from them. We talk about the healing power of the mountains that we both very much have in common, and pretty much everything under the sun. So you guys are going to absolutely love this episode. I'm so excited for you to hear Jordan's story. Without further ado, let's welcome Jordan Lewis to Raw Intentions. Before we get into anything specific, let's rewind and you can introduce yourself to the audience.
Okay. Well, I'm Jordan Lewis, founder and CEO of Link by Lou, and we are an experience-based premier permanent jewelry brand. I started the business back in April of 2020. It was like the heart of COVID, and I'm sure we'll dive into the evolution of all of that. But we are nationwide. We have linkers all across the US that offer the service and our products. We do a lot of national partnerships and events, and both work with small businesses. We go into people's homes and just celebrate life events with people, and excited to share more about the jewelry and the meaning and all of that. But I grew up in Kansas. I lived in Overland Park, Kansas most of my life, and I'm the oldest of 6 kids. So I'm number 1. There's 5 younger siblings. I'm like, is that math right? It's early. We've been traveling. But come from a very entrepreneurial family. My parents are extremely entrepreneurial. Most of my siblings are out of college except for one, and everyone has at least once or still has started or owned their own business. And I didn't really realize that that was how my family was until I honestly started telling more of my story. It's just like how it was. And I didn't realize that that was like such a unique thing about our family. When you have that many kids, someone's bound to like go into the corporate world and do that whole thing, and no one has. I think it's inspiring, and it also just has shaped me in so many ways, and just this idea that you can do anything you put your mind to. And if you have an interest, lean into it, learn about it, learn your strengths, and use that as your form of work. Because when you enjoy what you do, it's hardly work, but it is. It's work. Another thing that is so true, but it comes with so many other obstacles that you have to jump through. Like when you're starting your own thing, there are challenges that you're going to face that most people are not. And it can feel really lonely sometimes, just navigating all of that. But I think being able to go back to my family and having some understanding there is just so nice to have.
And a lot more rare, I think, than you realize. Even your parents both being entrepreneurs. Like that's such a... Like neither of my parents were entrepreneurs, and they're so supportive of me, but I feel just kind of lucky that I stumbled into like starting my own business, because that was never an example. And this was like, we started before, well, I guess, or had the idea like before Instagram was as like monetized, all that stuff. So it wasn't as much of a norm, I guess, for me growing up. Like I was never thinking like, ooh, how can I make my passions my job? Which that was probably more normal for you as a thought pattern of like, how can I do this? And it just, speaks to like nature versus nurture. Like the fact that all of y'all started your own, that's wild.
Yeah. My dad worked in the corporate world, but all along he had his own businesses on the side. And he would always, preach, if you find something you love and can make it your thing, like build a life that you love around what you love doing. And I think, again, I didn't ever set out to start this business to build a life of my own. It was more of this idea and this calling kind of mushed together. And, when the stars align for something and it's meant for you, it's so cool what happens when you actually lean into that. But I think, when I called them with the idea to have parents that were like, I think this is amazing. Like, you're going to learn so much through doing it, whether it's a hit or totally flops, like you're going to learn so much about yourself, and starting a business is going to show you sides of yourself that you don't know yet. It's also going to show you what you're made of. And it just continues to do that every day. So to have their support from the get-go, they were my first phone call, because the idea came in the middle of the night, and I sent them a text message at like 2 a.m. And, I'm like, whenever someone wakes up, please call me. I have this burning idea. I need to tell somebody about it. And I thought they were going to be like, what is permanent jewelry? Like, that's so silly.
Yeah.
But they were thinking like entrepreneurs, and they understood like there's a gap here. There's an opportunity. You have all of this past experience that actually makes you really fit to start something like this. Like you should absolutely go for it. So
that's
definitely
so cool.
Had the encouragement off the bat, which was really helpful.
That's everything. Like the support that I've had from my family and friends, if I didn't have that, because like you said, it's so lonely. It's really hard to start your own thing and to maintain that and make it successful. And if you don't have that support and people like believing in you and like supporting you even when you don't ask, I just truly don't think I would have my business today.
Right.
If it wasn't for that, because it really does take such like a village.
Yeah. When you started doing your jewelry, was your family like, go get them, or was it?
I don't think we really thought it was going to be like, it was more of just like a way to make extra money. Cause I was just making like necklaces for myself. Like my grandparents like helped me put the first ones together because they were in town. Cute. And my grandma like took me to the antique store to like get the beads because I had literally no money. And I started making it for myself and then my friends, but it was never like I was going to do that and then still go to grad school for occupational therapy, like at the beginning. Yeah. So I don't think we really like committed to it until I graduated and then moved to Atlanta like after that summer. because my parents saw that I was like making all this money and they're like, just try it, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, but they were never like, they never questioned it. It was never like a entrepreneurial family, but my mom's dad, who passed away before I was born when she was in college, who I'm like named after and everyone says that I'm very similar to, was like super entrepreneurial. So I think I get it from him.
Yeah.
Because no one else, and like there's tons of creatives in my family too, like great aunts that were like insane painters, and my, immediate aunt is super creative and a photographer. And so I think I've always had like that. But it's funny because my dad is like, he's an engineer and he doesn't understand social media. And so there's some things that I'm like, the podcast, he's like, I don't get it. Like you're not, he doesn't see the revenue. And I'm like, well, I'm not making money, but I'm like growing my brand. And he's like, what's a brand?
Exposure. Yeah.
But I just like accept the fact that like he doesn't totally get it. And I'm like, no, I'll like show you, but it's just going to take a little time.
Yeah. The proof is in the pudding.
Yes.
You're like, just wait and see.
Exactly.
It is so interesting how like our family lineage, like it does like run through your veins.
Yeah.
I come from a family of farmers and like that's hard work.
Yes.
And I feel like those things, I'm definitely not a farmer, but like there are things where it's like, you just sometimes need to get your hands dirty, get in there and do it. And that's not foreign to me, but I mean, it affected my parents. They had an effect on me. And I mean, so much of the background is so cool to look at, like what were people interested in? What were they good at? And how you have ties to that too. It's just...
I haven't even thought about that because my dad's family, they're farmers in Northern Ireland too. Like my dad was the only one to like go away and like go to college and be an engineer. Like everyone else kind of just stayed in this small town.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a work ethic. And I don't know if have you read Malcolm Gladwell?
No, I've heard of
at all. Well, he has a book where he talks about, I can't remember which book it is, but essentially it's like this study of, I think it was kids of immigrants in New York, like in the textile period, when like, I can't remember if they were coming from China or where they were coming from. And it just showed like, these kids grew up seeing their parents like absolutely fucking like work their asses off. And then they all ended up being like doctors and lawyers and like these very high paying, very hard work jobs. And it compared it to other people with different parents. And it was crazy, the correlation.
That makes so much sense.
No, I mean, that lineage piece, I mean, that's so true. And seeing that example coming back to your parents, like seeing them have an idea and then monetize off of it is such a cool way of thinking at such a young age. Because I think now being an entrepreneur and owning your own business with social media, it's like way more accessible. Like people are seeing it. So like, I talk to people that are in college and there's like majors for entrepreneurs and and like you're already starting to think about that. Or like, oh, I want to be a YouTuber. Oh, like that wasn't really a thing when we were growing up. So it was more
not
just
in the way that it is now.
Yeah,
like what you're doing, no one can teach that. Like,
right.
You have been such a trailblazer in those ways of like how you expand your presence and connect with people that are in your community and part of your brand. Like you do such a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
I don't think those things were being taught at all back then.
No, like I feel like school is like very much behind, but I also like probably similar to you, like I learned nothing or use nothing that I learned at school other than my connections.
Skills. Yeah, right.
That's it. I just learned how to like be social and have a good time.
You can't teach the soft skills.
No, you're right. So what did you study in school? And then you were a teacher for a while.
Yeah. So I started out with a major in kinesiology and a minor in nutrition. Thought I was going to go the physical therapist route or like a nutritionist. Health and wellness has always been very fascinating to me. Hated my biology and chemistry classes though. So we needed to make a switch because that was going to be the rest of my college career. And that's when I really started taking like all those tests and working with someone at the school to really figure out what am I good at and what would I enjoy. And I'm very much someone, I have a lot of different skills and I like using a lot of them or else I get bored. I do not like being put in a box. And every test that came back was like a therapist or a teacher.
Oh, funny.
And teachers really are. I mean, like sometimes you're the mom, the dad, the nurse, the counselor, the educator, the friend, like there's so many different roles that you play because these kids are spending most of their time with you. I remember so many impactful teachers in my life and that did feel like a fit. Like when they would explain the role and the different skill sets that you needed, it checks so many boxes. And, you're so young when you're in college.
Right.
Like if I were to go back, I would have taken a gap year and like learned a little bit more about myself, gotten some job experience outside of like waitressing. But it just felt right. And so I went that path, and I'm so glad I did, because there were so many things I learned then that affect my job now. One, working with people, like obviously that's a huge part of that. Two, managing time, being a leader, like you're leading a classroom of people.
Yeah.
And I was not perfect at it back then. It was such a learning experience. But anyway, yeah, switched my major to education, and then ended up getting my master's in special education. So I taught 1 year at the elementary level in special education, and then I had a placement during my substitute teaching time because I had like a semester before the next school year started after I graduated. And I substitute taught at a high school, and they ended up calling me and asking if I would come back full time. And so that's what kind of triggered that move to the high school level. And while I was teaching high school, that's when I was getting my master's. I was doing it online, teaching while I was in school. Yeah. But I loved that classroom so much. Like just being around those kids and their families and their peers really just shows a whole other side of life. And, you know, we're so lucky that we have developed in a typical way, because there's so many opportunities. But I was so passionate about helping find opportunities for what they brought into the world, because it was so unique and so special and so beyond what most typical developing people would be able to bring into the world. And I love that I got to work with them on life skills. And, you know, they're so savvy, and just they bring so much joy into any room they walk into. And
unapologetic joy.
Yeah. And, you know, there were really challenging times too. And I had kids that couldn't go to the bathroom on their own and things like that. So my job was very dynamic, where I was teaching. I was kind of like a nurse at times.
Yeah.
A lot of behavioral things that we had to deal with on the daily. But I'm just so grateful for those 5 years of being in the education world and working with the families and students and teachers that I got to. But when I decided to move out to Colorado, I went back to school to get my aesthetics license.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Huge shift.
Yeah. And what brought the Colorado move?
Yeah. So I traveled every summer. I did like a couple Europe trips.
Oh, yeah. Because I guess it's teaching.
Yeah. And one of the summers, I had always come on ski trips, and I had some friends that I had met on ski trips. And they're like, you should move to Denver. And I'm like, oh, I love my job in Kansas. I was also coaching and doing that whole thing. And so I decided to come out for a summer while I was in grad school online. I nannied out here, and I fell in love with Colorado. I mean, I grew up going on vacation here, and my godparents live here. So spent a lot of time in Colorado, but not a lot of time in Denver. And there's such a pull in Denver for creatives, I feel like.
Yeah.
And it just was a space where I felt like I could really show and express that side of myself. And it was so celebrated and encouraged here. And I don't know, I felt like everything was possible here. Kansas, I grew up there. It's a wonderful place, but I think that fresh start is always good sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just, it cracked a lot of things open for me, where I got to really explore, like, who am I? What do I feel called to do? And like, what is interesting to me? And I just did all of those things. I said yes to everything.
Yeah.
It was, the first couple of years were like just so much fun, because I was doing all the things I've always wanted to do that I couldn't do back home for some reason.
Well, I mean, I think there's something, I mean, I was the same way when I moved out to Denver. There's something about being either where you're from or with people like from your childhood, from college. And 'cause that's how Atlanta was for me. And so I felt almost stuck in this role because of people's expectations. And I cared so much about what people thought, and felt like I had to like act this certain way to like fulfill what people like needed from me or like wanted from me, which I put on myself. I'm not putting that on anyone else. But I moved out to Denver because I wanted to just move somewhere where I didn't know anyone. And it was the same thing. I was like, holy shit, I can walk into any room and be anyone I want to be. No one knows my name. No one knows anything about me.
It's the best feeling.
And it like cracks you wide open in like the best way and in scary ways. You're like, oh fuck, like I do this when I'm feeling insecure. I can be passive aggressive about this. I show up in this certain way out of fear of being rejected or whatever it is. Like it just like puts everything under a magnifying glass, and you learn so much about yourself in such a short time.
Yeah. Well, and I think people that make moves like that are ready to learn more about themselves. And so if you're willing to see the good, the bad, the ugly, and really develop from that, that's the best way to go about life. I mean,
absolutely.
If you're going to go do it and not learn from your mistakes, or, you know, try to be honest with yourself and who you are, there's no point.
Yeah, no.
So
it's always
I love that that's been your mindset, because it's probably shaped you in so many ways.
And same to you. Yeah. And it's like a cliche of Colorado too. Like everyone moves out here to like run away from something and to find themselves. But it is true. And it's such a transplant city. So it's nice because I knew like one or two people when I moved here. And it sounds like you had some people here as well, which
one or two.
Yeah. Which is like, it's nice because that's at least like one person that can connect you with another person. And that's like the snowball of making friends. It happened
so fast for you out here? Because it happens so fast.
Oh, I felt like I had 1 million friends within like a couple months. And I was like, this is easy.
And it's because everyone wants to connect. They want to see what you're up to and like show up to your events. And you know, I started a volunteer group at one point. And
cool.
I reached out to some people that I had met maybe once, and like 35 people came to this initial meeting that I had about wanting to volunteer in the Denver community. I was new here. I was looking for more than just partying and, you know, spending all my money on sushi. And I was like, I had no idea I didn't expect that level of support, especially from people that were kind of still strangers.
In community.
And like, they all became such good friends of mine, still are friends of mine. There were so many friendships that were formed within that. And I think if you come to a new city, it doesn't really matter where it's at. If you're putting yourself out there and like putting yourself in rooms with other people that have an interest in the same thing, like you're bound to connect with some people. And
on a deep level and showing up as authentically yourself. When you get accepted as that, it's like the most rewarding thing.
Yeah, it's freeing.
Ever. And also in Denver, we're lucky we have so many hobbies. Like there's so many things to do. So I think it's another great way to meet people because you have this like commonality right off the bat, and then you can kind of bond and grow that relationship above that. And I agree with the creative community too. And so did you feel like you were super creative like growing up, or was that something that you discovered about yourself when you moved here and you felt like it was more cultivated?
I've always been a creative. I mean, I've always loved, I was making like videos for my mom's friends for their husband's 50th birthday. And like, well, they probably weren't that old back then.
40th,
you know
maybe,
what I mean?
yeah.
Love music. I was like such a LimeWire girly.
I was
making
too.
Everyone's CDs at high school. I've always loved photography. I've always loved, since I was teeny tiny, making bracelets, and just, I was a very crafty person. And honestly, I owe a lot of that to my mom. She was super crafty, and like my gifts for Christmas were craft boxes of like friendship bracelets, build this and paint that. You know, like I was very lucky to be exposed to a lot of different things. And honestly, like I say it all the time, I'm like, I didn't even know art school existed.
Yeah.
You know, I that probably would have been a path I would have considered. But again, I think Midwest, it's like sports, academics, those types of things. And I think there were pockets of people that were probably more in that world. And, you know, obviously people knew about art school back then that went there, but I just didn't happen to fall into that then. And for whatever reason, it came later in life. But I'm so lucky that I had the experiences I did, because I think when the creative opportunities came about in my adult years, I was so ready for them. I was like, oh my gosh, this feeds my soul and makes me happy. I mean, even in aesthetics, it was so amazing to get creative with each client's skincare routine and like what we were going to work with them on that day. I did a lot of hair and makeup for different events and things like that. And I didn't even know that that could be a job. I knew that hairstylists and stuff existed, but I just couldn't imagine it for myself for some reason. It was like a very hard thing to believe that I could make money living in girl world, like doing people's hair and makeup.
Like just having fun. And calling it your job.
And I'd call my mom after like a 12-hour day and I'm like, I'm so happy.
I love
life. So, I mean, that's life. You figure out what it is that feeds you and you just dive in.
So what was the going to esthetician school and then starting your business? When did you move to Colorado and start that journey? And then what led you to start Link by Lou?
So I spent a summer out here in 2016. That's when I nannied and like fell in love with it. And I went back to Kansas to teach that last year of school. And I talked to the principal pretty immediately. And I was like, hey, this is going to be my last year here. Like, I'm moving out to Colorado. And I'm pretty sure my car was packed and I left the day school got out.
Oh my gosh.
So definitely knew I was like meant to be out here. And you know, it was hard to leave home, and especially when all my siblings were there and some of my best friends. And so it was a scary leap, but I've never felt more sure about something. And so I guess the official move happened in summer of 2017.
Okay.
And when I was thinking about moving, I was considering all job opportunities. I was like, I could go teach out there. I had some friends that taught out here and they're like, honestly, the school systems don't compare to back home. I would maybe think of another avenue. And so then I was looking at like counselors for troubled teens that go on these, hiking, camping retreats to just get to a better place.
Yeah.
I was looking at becoming a PE teacher and a sales rep for a medical device company. I mean, I was all over the map. And I think I was doing hair and makeup for my sister and her friends back home for their prom. I had like come back in town for it. My dad's like, you really love doing this, don't you? And I was like, I love it. It's so fun. He's like, well, I know I shot you down in high school when you wanted to go to cosmetology school, really wanted you to go get a degree, which I totally understand that. But he just saw the love that I had for it and was so encouraging to go back to school for it. So I started pretty immediately. I think I finished grad school on a Wednesday and started esthetician school on a Monday in 2017. Wow. And yeah, I was in school for 7 months and then started working in that profession, just building my book of business for 3 years. And then COVID hit and I was out of work. Obviously, we couldn't be in the studio. And so that was a great reset time for me. And it just like allowed me to take a step back. I was running the volunteer group. I was working 6-7 days a week because I said yes to everybody. Like my clients were everything to me. And I was going hard for a long time, for 3 years. Yeah. I had a lot of odd jobs in between when I was in school that I think also really set me up for success. I was doing photography for some businesses, doing a lot of marketing stuff for them. I managed a clothing boutique, learned all about inventory and buying and all of that. And then working as an assistant at an aesthetic studio. And so COVID was wild. It was like a shock to the system. And I really realized how pedal to the metal I had been going and I was burning myself out. And that's also when I was like experiencing the height of all my health issues. And so I just reset. I stopped drinking for that time period. I was like, I'm not going to drink until the stay-at-home order lifted. And that ended up being way longer than I thought it was going to be. But it was so good for me. And I just tapped back into my creative. My roommates were making fun of me because I was doing like macrame and stuff. And I went straight to Hobby Lobby when everyone else was like
getting toilet paper.
Yeah, exactly.
Milk.
So that speaks to the creative, I guess. And reading books again, like just didn't have time for that stuff. And when you're exposing yourself to books and podcasts and things like that, like you're learning constantly. And I think we're so lucky to live in a time where that stuff is so accessible to us. But I had seen a permanent bracelet on a friend of mine, Sam. We went to brunch probably a few months before COVID hit. And I was like, your bracelet is so cute. I want one. Is that from Etsy? Because I've always been pretty minimalist with jewelry. And so her like tiny little chain was exactly, right up my alley. Yeah. And she was like, no, I actually got it in New York City with my 2 friends. They're like friendship bracelets and it's welded on. It's been custom fit and then they weld it so you don't take it on and off. And my mind was blown. I was just like,
what?
I have never heard of this. I'm usually pretty with it. Like know what trends are out there. And I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And just honestly from a place of like, I want one of these, but I also like am interested in the process, all of that. And so life goes on, COVID hits. I'm like sitting on my couch late at night one night and I was like, I want one of those bracelets. And so I look up I text her, I'm like, where'd you get it again? She's like, it's this place called Catbird in New York City. And so I look it up and I'm like, oh my gosh, their stuff is stunning. I need to get one of these. And so I started looking up hotels and flights and all this stuff to go get a bracelet in New York. And I'm like, what am I doing? This has to exist somewhere else. And I looked high and low. And I was like, okay, this either doesn't exist or it's not being marketed. I found some places in like Europe and but nowhere that made sense to travel to for a piece of jewelry. And it's not something you can order online. It's an in-person experience. And so I actually had been reading a women's entrepreneur book that morning called Leapfrog. And the chapter I'd read that morning, because I have ADHD, I can't like read a whole book in a day. I'm like 5 pages and you're out. And it's one of those like short chapter kind of books, like to the point. And the chapter that morning was, when there's a problem and no solution, that's your business plan. And it didn't mean much to me that morning, but then I'm sitting on the couch and I have this issue. I can't get this bracelet I want. How do I find it? I can't find it. It's not accessible. It's not easy to get. Like, even if you lived in New York, you got to go in to the shop and get it, which is great for those New Yorkers. Like, I'm so jealous because had I had been there and been able to get it, this business probably wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
But it was like a flood of visions and ideas. And when like an idea hits you and you're like, this is meant to be mine.
Yeah.
Like I can either take care of this and run with it, or I can let the fear of what I don't know get in the way.
Yeah.
And luckily I was in a really healthy headspace, just taking time again for myself, and had this confidence that I have all the things in place to start something like this. Like I've done marketing for other businesses. I have done a little photography. I know so many women in the community through the volunteer group and through aesthetics. And if I want a piece of jewelry like this, surely my friends and family would want something similar. So I was like, how do I make this like a mobile thing? How do I bring this to Colorado? How do I then figure it out and like share this with the rest of the world? Like, how do we make this more accessible? And that was really the problem I was trying to solve at the time. But what I didn't know, and a huge part of my why, is that it would also bring so many opportunities for connection. Part of like I said, I really wanted to share this with other people. And so step one was like, figure out how to do it on your own and then share it. Like share the story, share about what you're doing, see what people say. And it was like immediate. I mean, social media is a magical thing.
Yeah.
And I had so many people asking how they could get their hands on it and how they could be a part of what I was doing.
Wow. Like right off the bat.
Off the bat. And I was not expecting that whatsoever. And I by no means was trying to start another job. Like I was going to go all the way with aesthetics. I wanted to open my own studio or med spa. I always wanted to create a space where other people came to work and I got to facilitate a really strong culture and wonderful training and just a wonderful customer experience. And while I thought I was going to do that with aesthetics, it totally shifted into this world of jewelry that, I didn't really have a background in. I had an interest in it, but it wasn't a thing I was in college for, or, I just figured it out because I wanted it that bad.
Yeah.
And I think anyone can do that with anything.
But I mean, I think you're so right with the gap in the industry being the business plan and also noticing those ideas, because I think when you said you were in a really great headspace, right? And you were reading and listening to podcasts. And I think a lot of people had experience with COVID where we realized how go we were, and it forced us to just stop and take a breath. And I think if you hadn't been in that headspace where things were a little more still, then you wouldn't have even noticed that thought and like put anything towards it, I
would have had no space in my brain.
No, absolutely not. You would have been running around so much. You would have noticed the jewelry and you'd been like, oh, that's cool. And then not thought anything of it.
Yeah. I mean, my headspace at the time was, I've been out of work for how many months now?
Yeah.
And other people are working from home and getting stimulus checks. And I was a new independent contractor. Like I didn't qualify for any of that stuff. I got the stimulus check. That's actually how I invested. It was only like $1,000 or something, but it went towards it.
The stimmy.
Yes. Good times. What were other people getting paid? What was it called?
Like furlough?
No, people were like getting paid from the government.
Oh,
because they weren't working.
I think it was just like unemployment or something.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, but
I didn't get it.
More money during COVID than what they were making. When they were
interesting.
In work, like if you were a server, if you were one of those jobs.
Yes.
I didn't qualify for whatever that was.
Right.
So my friends over here are like getting rich,
I'm getting
doing
paid.
nothing.
So you're like, I got to figure something out.
I got to figure something out. And I was like building at-home skincare routine, things that I could be working with my clients on. And I'm like, this just isn't going to cut it. And so when the idea to start permanent jewelry came to mind, it was like, this will be a great side gig for a while I figure out how I could scale this thing. And,
Funny.
But it happened immediately. And so it was like a, oh shit moment of, I have an amazing career I've been building over here for 3 years. I have an incredible client list. Like I stay busy all the time, but I also have this opportunity over here that if I lean into it, I can make something great of it, or I can always half-ass it and it's not going to become what it's meant to become. And luckily, and not so lucky, there were just certain doors that closed with the aesthetic side of things. And it was so hard for me to decide to close my books. And I did, and it's one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Yeah.
I miss it all the time, but it's definitely helped set me up for success in Link by Lou. So,
and Okay, so you had the idea, you taught yourself how to create this jewelry. Did you make the Instagram and then there was influx, or like what's
the steps?
Yeah.
Yeah. So first thing I did, branding. I like had a whole vision board within an hour of the idea. I was like, Link, it's going to be tan, white, black, keep it minimal, simple. I had my fonts picked out, everything. I sent it to my mom. She's like, oh my God, you work fast.
Yeah. She's like, okay.
And I was even making like mock videos of jewelry I already had, just thinking of like, what do I want launch videos to look like? Like I went full creative mode,
okay,
right?
Cool.
And then it was, okay, in order to market something, you have to have the product and the service in your hands. So I started ordering like little scraps of gold, and 14 karat solid gold is expensive.
Yeah.
And so I'm ordering like inches at a time because I can't go into a shop and touch and feel the jewelry. I don't know what the sizing is.
Right.
I've never worked with that stuff. And so it was just honestly like everything was unknown. It was uncharted territory. It was like, how are we going to bring this to fruition? There's no rule book. Yeah. So I'm ordering these 1-inch scraps to see what kind of chains I would even want to carry. Simultaneously, my mom's sending me different like welding businesses out there, and I'm calling these welding suppliers and telling them what I want to do. And they're all like, you want to do what? You want to weld on people? Yeah. I'm like, well, in a safe way. And they're like, yeah, we don't have anything for you.
You want to weld on people?
They were mesmerized. They were
That's
like,
so funny.
She's psycho. And I knew the places that were doing it that I had found, like Catbird or these places in Europe, they had these big machines and they didn't look like something you could just carry around very easily.
And that was important to you from the beginning, right? Because that was like the problem that you were trying to solve.
Right. And I landed on this one company and they were fascinated by the idea. And they're like, we actually just created this at-home welder that I think might work really well for you. We have a couple different versions. And so they sent me a couple different versions, but they had never heard of it before. And I was FaceTiming with them, like, how do I set this up? I was doing everything by myself at home because it was still lockdown time. So it was, you just got to figure it out. You have to like thoroughly read this manual.
Sounds like my worst nightmare.
Oh my gosh, same. But when I tell you I've never been more motivated by something in my life to like get it figured out and do it quickly, because it was in that time period too where they're like, we get to go back in a week. Oh, JK, next week. And so I was like, it's only a matter of time before the world opens back up and I'm back at work. So if I want to figure this out, I need to move quickly.
True. You had like a fire under your ass. You're like, let's do this.
And the other thing I kept thinking was like, if I don't do this, somebody else will.
That's what I was going to say.
Like, I just knew that. And I was like, I want to create the wave. I don't want to be getting on board when it's already a thing. And so obviously permanent jewelry existed, but this vision I had to make it a mobile service was not.
Yeah.
And so anyways, figured out how to weld at home. Bless my old roommate Paige's heart. She let me weld on her. I welded my first bracelet on myself by myself. I couldn't do that today if I tried. Yeah. Again, it was like adrenaline. And I didn't even tell my friends about this until I was ready to launch. Like until I knew how to weld the jewelry. I knew which chains I was going to carry. Like I wanted this to be a business before I launched it to anyone. And I think that was the coolest part, was like watching their reactions as I was rolling this out. And they're like, when can we have a party? Like, we want to help you launch this thing. And yeah, it started, I don't know. It was like it developed a mind of its own. It was
like quickly.
People were having link parties. They were like calling them link parties, and they would make drinks and charcuterie boards. They had link drinks. They had like the little men hanging on the side of the cup kind of thing. And they're like, girls' night, we're getting linked. And it was the coolest thing that this was an opportunity for people to finally gather again and to do something unique and to bond over something and to have something that they had together. I had never imagined it would have taken off like it did. I knew it would grow. I just didn't know when or how.
Yeah.
And you don't have to. You don't have to know all the details.
No.
You have to know that this is something you want to like pour into, and the rest will follow if you dedicate yourself to it.
Well, and also how cool that community and cultivating that safe space was so important to you in other ways that you were planning on spending whatever career that looked like for you. And you kind of accidentally did that. I mean, I'm sure, somewhere that was the goal, but you couldn't have imagined it to, take off like that, and people planning like link parties. You're like, wait, what? Like,
I would show up and they fully were celebrating Link by Lou, which was just Link at the time. There's an evolution to the name, but it was wild.
Yeah.
And I remember texting some friends and I'm like, this is nuts.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, this is going to be huge.
Yeah. And so it was just you at first.
Just me at first.
And I mean, because you've scaled, you've got like so many linkers nationwide. You've got an office, you've got employees. I mean, you've got like a massive business on your hands, like an empire. Like I didn't realize how big it was behind the scenes until you and I hung out, and I was like, holy shit, like you've got a little army over there. So how did that go from just you? And then you said there was an evolution of the name too.
Yeah. So my sister, she's 9 years younger than me. We're the only 2 girls of the 6 kids. So we've got 4 brothers. She and I could not be more opposite, but also the same human at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm the like chaotic older sister energy, and she is like very put together, type A. She's just more by the book. And we grew super close, especially as she was in high school and in college. Like she would come stay with me in the summers in Colorado. And I was like, I'm going to get you to move out here one day. And we always talked about owning something together. We always talked about like having a boutique, or her helping out with like a studio that I opened one day or something like that. She's also very artistic herself. And so we had a lot of similar interests, but like never knew what our business was going to be together. But she was supposed to go study abroad in Italy that summer. And it was COVID. Yeah. She couldn't go. Yeah. And I was like, please work for me. And she's
study
like,
abroad here.
Yeah. She's like, no one's going to spend $75 on a bracelet. And I'm like, but it's solid gold. That's actually a really good price.
Yeah.
And anyway, long story short, she hit me up and she's like, okay, I'm interested. Like, I don't want to sit at home all summer and not do anything. And I don't really want to come out to Colorado again. Like, I want to be where my friends are. And so it was like my brothers all around her. One of them's a welder, and they're all like yelling at her, trying to tell her how to use the welder. And I'm over there training her too. And I'm just like, we're going to get this figured out, but you're going to launch Kansas City because that's where I'm from. And I have so many friends asking about this here. Like, you're set up for success, trust, just let's do this. Yeah. And she got on board, and I mean, she crushed it that summer. She ended up doing like 3 parties a day some days. Wow. Just going back to back to back. And I watched how her confidence grew just as a young woman.
Interacting with all these other women.
Yeah. And going into people's homes where that's like a really intimate setting. They're all with their best friends. So they're all comfortable, and like you're coming into their space because at the time businesses weren't open yet.
Yeah.
So we got her trained, and then she was going back to school and we needed to fill her spot. So we trained another person. And before that, I had trained a friend of mine here in Denver who I was like, moved to Denver from Chicago. We've been talking about it forever. I have a job for you. She now works on our HQ staff side. She's been with us since like the very beginning. Shout out Katie. But yeah, it's been so beautiful how it's evolved. And it really started with like people that were in my close circle that I would bring on. And then it expanded into like their friends or people that they knew. And then it was like we got up to a point where we had over 1,000 applicants a week.
What?
Yeah, it was nuts. We're not there anymore because people are now starting their own businesses and, doing that whole thing. But it was insane for a while. And we were on a mission to get the best people in the seats of being a linker because, I mean, it's just such a unique and special job. And the way you get to connect with customers and hear their story of why they're getting a bracelet, there's often a sentimental value tied to it, or they're doing it with somebody or celebrating something, or they're doing it in memory of somebody. We've had some pretty incredible stories just coming from linkers of why someone came to sit in their chair that day. And I just got a text yesterday. Someone's like, I know I say it all the time, but I just feel so lucky to be able to have this opportunity to connect with people in this way because it is so unique.
And so intimate, like you said. Like, I've never thought about that. You coming into that space where everyone's best friends, like everyone knows each other. And it's also kind of similar to the esthetician. Like, when I get my makeup done or my hair done or my eyelashes done, like I'm having a heart to heart with
what it is?
The girl that's doing it. It's so intimate.
It's a transfer of energy. I know that maybe sounds crazy to some people, but this is something I learned in esthetician school. When you touch somebody, you have the ability, you're going to transfer energy from one another. And like you have the ability to send something amazing to them. And you also need to like protect yourself if it's someone that is coming in just down and out or whatever. Yeah. When you're close to people, it does rub off on you, right? And so you have this opportunity to impact somebody in a really positive way. not only just like with the energy that you bring into the room, but like you might be the first person in a month or even 3 months that's doing something for that person.
Wow.
Think of moms, like they're constantly taking care of other people or nurses or someone that's been single for a while. And it's just like when they feel like someone's taking care of them, you do open up and you open up quickly. Like you're getting a wax, like you're telling that girl everything. 'Cause she's seeing everything. So it's like similar but different. But I think knowing that you have the opportunity to have such a positive impact is so important as a linker, any service provider that's going to be in close proximity with somebody, because this could be the best part of their week, you know, and they're also getting to leave with something that a product that we're really proud of and a memory or the fact that it's marking something special or significant in their life, but the opportunity just to get to know someone so quickly and to be feeling like you just made a friend or like some deep connection. I always say it, connection is just as important as food, water, shelter.
Yeah.
Your connections in life feed the way that you show up. And if, you know, in COVID, you're not having those, you're not even going to the grocery store and exchanging smiles with people. So to now be able to get back into that, and I talk about COVID so much because I do think there's still a major impact that it's left on us. And Link by Lou is an opportunity, whether you're a linker sitting in the chair or somebody coming into a shop to get linked or to see what shops they're popping up in. Like if you put yourself out there and go do something for yourself, like you're also going to make some connections that day. And I think that's one of the coolest parts about the job. That's
beautiful. And I mean, it comes back to your why of why you started this in the first place. That's so powerful. And I think that's what transcends and makes you so successful, because the people that you hired, you know, starting small in your close circle and making sure that they're kind of an extension of you, and then friends of friends and growing that way and being like so intentional about your hires and being like, no, everyone needs to be special because this is such a special bond. This is such a special experience. This isn't just like me putting jewelry on someone. It's so much more than that.
Yeah. And, you know, you talked about how we've grown so much and also being intentional and tight knit. You know, there was a time where we had too many people on our team. And we've been working on scaling that back because you might always have the opportunity to scale and grow in numbers, but that's not always the best for your business. And I think we had to learn that the hard way. You know, I think as a team, there was always discussion around it and it's always been intentional, but I think it's coming back to the core of the original vision of, I do want it to be a tight-knit group. I do want these people. I mean, the further you get away from the core, the less likely they are to remember the why and the vision and all of that. And so, and it just gets hard to manage. And like, this is a complex industry to be in. You're dealing with a raw material that is sometimes hard to get your hands on. We're dealing with a custom fit piece of jewelry. And so you don't always know how many inches of gold you're going to need of this style and that style. I mean, there is a huge process that goes into all of that.
I'm sure. And the more you grow, the more...
the more complex it gets. So we are in a season of simplifying and really recognizing, like, where does Link by Lou thrive? What's the sweet spot? You know, we really put permanent jewelry on the map in the sense that we were first to market in a lot of places. And a lot of people didn't know about permanent jewelry until they stopped into a boutique to buy the t-shirt they've had their eye on. And then they found us, or however they came across it. But now it's offered everywhere. And, you know, it's easy to get caught up in like, well, everyone else is doing this now. Like, wouldn't you want to keep growing and being in every market? And you have to get honest with yourself. Like, that just doesn't feel right for us anymore. And yes, we want to be in markets that want us there and that we have really good linkers there. But if something's not meshing, it's just, we're in a season of it's not working. And that's okay. Like, we have some incredible individuals on this team, and I want to keep this thing growing in ways that are going to support them as well, because they've been a huge part of helping Link become what it is today.
And when you're talking about, you know, I mean, permanent jewelry being everywhere and y'all putting it on the map, I feel that because I've been in a spot where people have kind of like gone and ran with an idea that I've had. And that is like so frustrating too. So I'm curious, because I know we've talked about it and it's affected your business. I mean, the same exact things have affected my business too. When, you know, there's copycats and people doing the same thing. that you're doing and it makes it less unique. So how do you feel about that? And how have you adjusted your business to that?
Yeah, I think I love that question. And it's a hard one to answer, but I'll speak from like just my personal point of view. Something I've learned, and I feel like everyone is told this all the time, but until you're in the shoes of being compared to others or just dealing with competition in general, there has to come a point where you genuinely believe that no one's going to do it like you. And like everyone can offer a cheeseburger, but not everyone's going to make the cheeseburger the same way. You know what I mean? Like it's not some trade secret that the type of dish exists, but like how you do it and what you put in to make it come to life, like it shows. And so we want the experience from like the point of discovery that people find us to the booking process, to their interaction with the linker, or if you're a business having the linker in your store that you've curated and like poured your heart and soul into and made a space for your customers, like to bring someone else in is a luxury for us. Like we are so grateful for those opportunities and we want to make it worth it for you. And so there's cross collaboration that is involved in like getting creative with the events that you can host. But then like when somebody comes and sees our selection, they might say, hey, I saw this other brand and they have 20 options and you guys have 10. Like, can you guys get more options? But we're so intentional even about the options that we offer because we want to keep things timeless and like the best of the best. We don't want our customers to get decision fatigue. We want them to walk away knowing they can mix and match any of our chains or get multiples of the same one. And it's going to create this unique look on them. We want them to have this amazing experience in the chair, like that connection time that I talked about. Like, I don't want somebody sitting in a chair being like, that girl just wanted my money. You know what I mean? I want them to feel genuinely invested in and that our linkers are curious about your life and like, how are you doing? And like, what brought you here today? Because so much just snowballs from that. And then, you know, so I would say like the quality of our jewelry being 14 karat solid gold, we are so firm on sticking with that level of quality because it is a permanent piece. We want it to be a part of your normal lifestyle, oils, tanning, showers, sweat, swimming, all of it. And then we want you to have an incredible experience and we want you to have an incredible connection. I think, you know, there's hundreds, thousands of permanent jewelry companies out there now, whether it's like a one-man show or there's other companies that are growing. But when we talk about like comparison or other businesses, we know that there's something so unique about the type of people that are involved in this and the heart that goes into things on the back end, who we use as suppliers, just all of it. And
you can't replicate it.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, you can try and someone might do something else better than us and that's okay too. Like there's enough to go around for everyone too. I think that's something you have to remember. But, you know, people often, I think we're in a point in the industry where people want to get their hands on permanent jewelry. And I feel like especially in the last year and a half, but now we're seeing this turn of people do care about who they're getting it from and what the quality is. And they want to have a good experience. If you're spending that amount of money, you don't want to just be like in the door and out and have this transactional feeling. You want it to feel special. And so focusing on that, but then also being open to other opportunities and ways that we can grow beyond just like numbers of people. But how can we make the customer experience better? How can we make people that can't come get linked still a part of the brand in some way? And then, you know, we have so many amazing opportunities with national brands. We get reached out to all the time by like crazy brands where they're like, we've done so much research and between like the branding and just the booking process and all of this, like you guys are so professional and legit and you give off that luxury feeling. Like we want you to be a part of this. And so to be considered a match for some of these brands that I've looked up to or like even events, you know, we've done like F1 things and BravoCon and we've been on Southern Charm recently and like just things like that. It's like, this is so cool that they want us to be a part of that.
Well, and they're seeing it from the branding to the experience to the quality of what you're doing, everything like it's being translated, which is huge for a founder. I mean, to have your story like seen by someone that doesn't even know you. Like that means you're doing it right. And I feel like for all of that, like you said, like being okay, and it's a process, like being okay with like, okay, there are other people that exist, doing this, they can try to replicate what we're doing. And yes, there are people that maybe there's like a certain thing that they can excel at and that's their niche, but you're going to keep your blinders on and stick to what you know and what you know you're good at. And I think that's such a skill to have, to be able to say like, okay, but we can do this better and we're going to focus on this versus coming up with 20 or 30 new styles or offering a lower price point for a lower quality chain instead of keeping to what your true and tried is, you know, because I mean, I've experienced that with my business too, like trying out certain products. And I'm like, you know, I think there are other people, like even with jewelry, I used to create jewelry and it was so great when I started. And then, you know, people started copying and then trends moved and I didn't feel as aligned with those trends. And I saw other people doing it so much better. And I'm like, I don't really want to be in this space anymore. Like, I'm not trying to compete with these people. I kind of want to buy their jewelry. Like, I like what they're doing, you know? So I'm going to pivot and do something else or like just stick to what I'm good at instead of trying to have my hands in every single pot in every single industry. So I think you do a really good job of that because people then know that when they come to you, they're getting that experience, they're getting that quality. And it's such a word of mouth thing. Like you hear from a friend or random intern at a bigger company, they're like, oh my God, no, you need to hire this company. Like you're right. Like that does go so far and it leads to future collaborations and clients. And that's like how it goes.
100%. And I think, you know, that was learned to get to this place of confidence of there's competition out there and there might be things that that group or that individual is doing better, but that could be one of the most damaging, distracting things if you are like, yes, do research on what other people are doing to make sure you're still maintaining a presence. But if you get sucked into that on a level that then takes you away from like your why and your plan, it's going to take that much longer to get to where you guys want to go. And
it's distraction.
It also mentally can be exhausting and damaging. And especially if you're in a place of trying to create something amazing with your business, but in business, there are constantly problems that need solved.
Yes.
There's things that aren't going the way that you planned. And so if you're dealing with this over here, and then you're also looking to the side of what are they doing over there? Like you're going to stall out and it's going to become so overwhelming that you can't keep going. Like you need to preserve some of that curiosity and put that into your business of what can we become better at? What things can we evolve in and how can we elevate what we're already doing? And that's where your time's going to be best spent. Because,
and your energy,
Yeah. I mean, I think that's maybe even why we launched certain cities that we did was, well, we want to be the first there before somebody else gets there because competition was rising. And that's so distracting.
Right.
And it was like, breaks, we need to shift back.
But everyone's been through that. I know you have to kind of learn that way because it can be distracting and you're wasting energy. And what I always try to think is like, you know, if people are copying you and people are trying to do what you're doing, whatever they do is always going to be one step behind what you're doing because it's coming from your brain, it's coming from your brand, and they can't read your mind.
Yeah.
So they're always going to be one step behind because when they see you launch this thing that you've been working on for 6 months, they're going to have to scramble and figure out how to do it themselves. Yeah. So you always have, that's how I kind of get through it is I'm like, well, you don't have my brain.
You don't. So, and, I mean, again, no one's going to do it like you. And
yeah, but I mean, you've done it so gracefully and you mentioned, you know, overhiring and overscaling and now you're trying to scale it back. So do you think like when you think back and over these last, and I can't believe it's only been like 4 years. I feel like you've been doing this since like 2015 or something. Like
so do I sometimes.
So
but
insane
then again, I'm like,
that it just started in 2020. Because I, of course, knew Link by Lou long before I met you. Like you're like a celebrity. Like it truly is insane what you've started and this whole wave that you've created. When you look back from starting until now, have there been other mistakes that you feel like you've really, really learned from that you're implementing today?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I've made so many mistakes along the way, but I genuinely don't see them. And this could be unpopular thought about this, but like you're learning from, if you're not learning from every mistake, then yes, they're mistakes. Yeah. But if you're learning from the things that you did wrong because you didn't know how to do it, you didn't know it was going to come up, you don't always know then what you know now. Yeah. I just really try to make sure that I'm constantly evolving and like improving from whatever that mistake might have been then. I would say there's probably more small day-to-day mistakes that I've made than like massive mistakes because at the end of the day, everything has been a step forward, whether it was in the wrong direction or not. True. I think I've developed this ability to pivot quicker.
Which is such a skill for an entrepreneur, pivoting.
Yeah, you have to. You have to get so freaking comfortable with change. You got to want change.
Yeah.
Like it's happening that often. And if you don't see it as opportunities to try something different, or, you know, challenges are just going to come at you right and left. And I feel like I've developed new muscles around that I didn't have before, where it used to fully fatigue me. And I'm not saying I'm all the way there yet. I definitely have days where it gets to me, especially if I have this really what seems like a solid front on of, okay, I can handle that. We can handle that. We're going to make this decision. And we're just like moving along. There's days where it all comes flooding in and you're like, I hope to God that we're moving in the right direction.
This is the right decision.
It's like you can be confident 9 of the 10 days, and then you'll have that 10th day where you're just like imposter syndrome. And then you do see everything as mistakes, and you're like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? Why did I wait so long? Why did I say that on this call? Or, you know, it's just, but as long as you're learning, like you have to show yourself grace because no one knows what they're doing out here.
Right.
That is the biggest misbelief, I think, is that people are like, I can't do it because I don't know. It's like, but do you want it, and do you want to figure it out? Are you willing to ask questions that maybe seem silly? Are you willing to ask for help? You can't do everything yourself. I am constantly looking to hire people that are going to do the job better than me.
Yeah.
And my job is to find those people and to keep them in sync and to keep the vision alive and to keep reminding people why we're here, what we're doing, make sure culture is strong. You know, like everyone brings something different to the table, and they're going to make mistakes too. And if you see everything as like, oh, you fucked up,
black and white, just
like, that's not going to work here. It's like, no, this is an opportunity to 1, become a better leader, to 2, become a better learner. Like it's, I don't know. I have learned to just fully embrace mistakes or challenges or change.
I love that.
And yeah, I've definitely messed up on some things for sure.
Same.
But, you know, I'm like a note taker in my phone, and I'm like, okay, make sure you implement this immediately. Or like, that wasn't in place and that was such an oversight. You need to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think if I were to not feel like I was evolving and growing as a human, then I would say I'd made a lot of mistakes because I didn't ever try to fix any of them.
Well, then you wouldn't have the business you have today.
Right.
So what is your role today? I'm sure it's changed so much over the years.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what I just explained, like the hiring process, the team dynamics, the culture, the vision setting, obviously lots of decisions.
Putting out fires.
CEO, yeah. And then, you know, I played creative director for a long time, and we've grown our growth team. And honestly, like we have such strong identity, I feel like, of who Link by Lou is and how we show up. And like there's such consistency with that I think our customers really appreciate, and other brands or businesses that want to have us pop up. You know, there's always ways we want to evolve and like grow. We just did a brand refresh. We didn't rebrand, but as more permanent jewelry companies started coming into the space, you know, it's my job to identify and prioritize what we need to focus on. And I think one of the things was like, how do we differentiate ourselves? When we once solved a problem that existed, that problem doesn't exist anymore. You can go down a small town street and someone's going to be doing permanent jewelry in one of the shops. Like it's everywhere now. And so then it's like, what's the new problems that we're solving for today? And how do we stay fresh? How do we stay the premier brand and like that elevated experience with that elevated quality product? Yeah. And that can be hard to keep up and to keep beating yourself. Like you hear it all the time. When you're the first in something, it's hard to stay in that position. Yeah. And I'm sure there's been seasons where like from the outside looking in, people are like, ooh, have you seen this new company and this new one? And so then it does distract away from what Link is doing. What we're seeing now is how many people are coming back. Like, the experience doesn't compare. Yeah. And the quality and the customer service and like, you know, just all of those pieces matter. Yeah. And again, it goes back to like, don't get distracted of what other people are doing. Stay in your lane and like really focus on how you can get better with what you offer, and make sure that if you're doing something that someone else is doing just because it's a money grab or it's exciting at the time,
it's not going to work.
If that wasn't on your heart, it's not going to work. And I think that's probably true for any business or industry. Like there's going to be people that get into it because they see the opportunity to make money doing it. And there's going to be the ones that really see the value in it and the problems that it's solving for people and the way that it is going to affect people's lives in a positive way. So
when it comes back to the idea that there's so much oversaturation, and there is when people are copying other people, if you're showing up uniquely yourself, it's not oversaturated because no one else has done it the way you have.
Yeah. We've had a lot of businesses like use our photos or use part of our name. Like get linked was not a term outside of the networking world.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, let's
like
link
LinkedIn.
Up.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that goes to why we had to change our name. But
funny.
Not just LinkedIn, but there's a lot of businesses out there with the word
link,
like something to that effect. And it was all in the networking space, but it was like right and left. I would love to rattle off some names, but I also am like,
can you tell me after the podcast?
Yeah, I will. Okay,
good.
I've got some funny ones.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That like, as I try to be like grounded on it, like that fucking pisses me off. Like, cause I've dealt with that too. Like people taking my designs, my photos, using them on their own. Like, I'm like, where the hell do you get off?
Well, and then customer confusion.
Yes.
They're seeing our photo and then they're going in and they're getting something else. And I love that the industry is growing. I think that's amazing. I'm like, that's so freaking cool that like someone else started doing permanent jewelry and their yes led to my yes. Of seeing a different opportunity, and my yes led to other people being able to do it with me, but then other people seeing an opportunity to do it on their own. And I think that's wonderful, but it's a lot better when people do it in their own way. Like put your own spin on it.
Just do it in your own way. Yeah. No, it's that's one of my...
we have people reach out and they're like, you said this was 14 karat solid gold and it's not. I took it into a jeweler and we're like, that's not our chain.
Yeah.
It's like they're fully confused because they have such a facade of how they're showing up in the industry and they're small enough that it's not...
That's crazy that people reach out to you.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like next level.
It's kind of cool.
I mean, no, like everyone's just obsessed with you.
No, I'm kidding.
No, genuinely.
I love that people love permanent jewelry and that the industry is growing. It creates a lot of opportunity and it educates other people that didn't even know about it before.
Right.
And then they end up finding us.
Right.
And it's like, thanks for all the others that are supporting this industry.
Yeah.
And I want to...
It is a new industry.
Support them. If they're like, your chains are beyond what I can afford, it's like, there's so many amazing options out there that are gold filled, gold plated. So yeah, there's something for everyone.
So how do you mentioned mental health earlier. How do you stay grounded and how do you give time back to yourself in this like whirlwind of owning your own business? Because even without any prior ups and downs with mental health, like that's a basket case in itself, owning a freaking business.
And it's so different from what you have going on personally. And then you do have your business, like you said.
But you still have both. You still have the personal shit. Yeah.
Exactly. And everyone does. They have their own thing and then their other thing. I think, where mental health, it just is the most important thing. Like I've built a team around me, whether that be friends, family, my partner. And then I also have my therapist, my naturopath, my business coach, my, whatever, an acupuncturist. Like some may say I'm doing too much, but like when I can call on different people for different things during different seasons, and I've spent years building that team around me. I'm by no means like a Kardashian that has her squad that's like only for
that comes in and is like,
But I made a point to build that and always have those things in place. And like the fact that I can call my therapist up and get on his books because I've been going to him and I've been putting in that work over the years. And like, because I've worked with a business coach and like they've even met and worked together. It's like looking at your life and what's important to you. So like my physical health is important. My mental health is important. I also get into these like extremely stressful times and seasons, and I need other avenues to help me that maybe the regular routine type things aren't enough. And I think exploring like what works for you, because there's so many different resources out there. There's different types of medicine. There's different types of therapies. There's different experiences that you can have too that are going to affect your mental, hopefully in positive ways, but it's not one size fits all. It's
not. Yeah.
It's not. But like the people in my life often, they support and encourage, but also remind me when I've poured myself a little bit too much into work and need to just relax. And I think my boyfriend once said, he was like, I mean this with zero disrespect, but the way this is affecting you today is just like next level.
Yeah.
And I just want to remind you, you're not curing cancer. No one's going to die if you don't like answer that next email. Like it's a business and you can wake up tomorrow and you can deal with it then. And you need that sometimes because to be overly invested in something and not coming as your best self at times is not healthy either. And like I said, I'm working for a lot of different people. I have a responsibility to take care of myself and to make sure I'm coming as my best self so that I can pour back into them and come with good ideas and come with a clear mind so I can make the smart decisions. It takes a lot of time to put those things in place. And if you've never been to therapy, the hardest part is starting and finding a good therapist.
Yeah.
Like you're probably going to have to shop around a little
bit. Which
is
the like barrier to entry. I feel like that a lot of people face. I've been there where I'm like, I don't even want to start because I'm going to have to talk to a million different people.
Yeah. And you think like talking to your friends is enough or your family is enough, but you need that outside perspective to really provide you with the appropriate tools and resources to deal with what you're dealing with, because our friends and family, bless their hearts, but they're not professionals in that.
No.
They love us and they're going to maybe tell us what we want to hear sometimes. And sometimes you need the person that's going to tell you what you don't want to hear or how you can actually make progress in an area, not just like make you feel good in the moment, but build your toolbox. And my therapist actually is the one that led me to my business coach. And he led me to other forms of therapy that have played such a significant role in me growing as a person individually and as a businesswoman. And I would not be where I'm at today or be able to handle the things that I do. I had an employee the other day. She was like, oh my gosh, how do you do this? How do you do this every single day? Like you're making such hard decisions that have, great effect. And I was like, I have to take care of myself. Yeah. And you can reach burnout fast. And I did that back in my aesthetics days. And I've had it happen a couple of times in this career, but you have to slow down sometimes and do something for yourself. And it's the best money I've ever spent is on my mental health.
I mean, and I think that's something that I like a phase that I'm currently in. I'm trying to slow down. I'm trying to hire more help and work less. Like I don't prescribe to the hustle culture. Like I think that that's very unhealthy and short-term vision where like you can't last like that forever. And I get burnout too. And it's, this thing where I just think that I'm supposed to be doing all these things. And I'm like, this isn't sustainable. Like I can't work like this forever. Like I need more help so I can like go paddleboarding at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday just to like clear my head or like I shouldn't feel guilty about those things because
I'm so jealous you get to do that. That was supposed to be me.
I know.
Just kidding.
I know.
I'm actually so happy for you that you get to do that.
Thank you. It is. And I don't know, like right now, that's my form of therapy is being outside and going skiing and doing and like reading and taking time to myself. Like even when I'm podcasting throughout the day, if I have like guests, I'll schedule it to where I have an hour in between. So I can I'll just like go outside right there and like get barefoot in the grass and just like breathe for a second. Like I need that time. And I think people forget that you have to take care of yourself. This is even with your friends. Like if you're not being a good friend to yourself and like taking a beat, talking to a therapist, which also to your point with therapy too, like when I'm talking to my therapist, not only are they like listening, but they're also, I say something, they're like, wait, well, why? Like that cliche of like, well, how do you feel about that? It's like, but why do you think that? And it's like, wait, what do you mean? Why do I think that? And they're like, when did you start thinking that way? And I'm like, oh, fuck. Well, how much time do you have? And they're like, well, 45 minutes. And I'm like, great. It's so transformative. And I think having those tools and figuring that out and having all these people kind of on standby ready for you is, when you're starting to feel a certain way, okay, I got to go book an acupuncture appointment. Okay, I got to go see my therapist, which is beautiful. Like you kind of have to have an army like that in order to be okay.
You do. And again, it takes time, but it's worth it. Yeah. It's worth the investment.
Well, and you mentioned Ryan is his name, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What did I call him the first time? I called him something random. Remember, I was like, isn't his name blah, blah, blah? And you're like, no, it's Ryan. I was like, totally. I'd like,
really?
Yeah. So we were
I don't remember that.
I was like Jason or something. And you're like, Ryan. I was like, got it. This is so random, but you were talking earlier about like all the people that you have on your team, like in your life. And this is such a small thing, but because you don't drink or not really. And we were at the pop-up that we did a couple weeks ago, and her boyfriend, Ryan, owns this like insane hat business, Deuce's Wild Hat Co. Is that what it's called? And I mean, he's like absolutely crushing it. He's in Summit. Definitely check him out at the farmer's market. And such a nice guy. I never met him before. And some guy came up to him and was like, I'm going to go get some drinks. Like, what does your lady want to drink or something? And he was like, oh, she doesn't need anything. She doesn't drink. And he was like, what? Like, why? And he didn't even like the way he just didn't even explain it. He's like, she just doesn't like it. Like, and he was just like, she doesn't eat it. Like versus like getting like, I don't know, man, it's fucking annoying. Like I just like, I overheard that exchange as I was like walking away and I was like, I love that. Like he totally is like there for you and like goes to bat for you. And that's what a partner should be. And you also need that. And I think it's cool that you guys both have your own businesses because you understand each other. And you can also tell each other like, you're not saving lives. You're making jewelry, you're making hats. Like it's gonna be okay. And I need that reminder sometimes too, because you get so caught up in things. Like it feels like everything needs to be decided right now. Everything needs to get done right now, but it's not life or death. And like, it can wait until tomorrow. And sometimes you do need to hear that. But I just loved that. Like he does seem like so kind and supportive of you.
I didn't even know that like level of support existed. I mean, he filled I have all the allergies in the world and he filled a piñata for my birthday with like all these dietary restricted snacks.
That's like our love language. We talked about that, like knowing your dietary restrictions.
No, he's been so supportive. And you know, when we first met, I was drinking and then we went on a few dates and then both kind of like dated other people or just, it was in that season. I think we both really questioned how are our lives going to mesh together? Like he's in Summit County, I'm in Denver, I'm trying to like build an empire and he's like living his best life and
hucking cliffs and
right. And when we like met back up, I was like, I'm actually like, I'm cutting alcohol out, not because I can't handle it or anything. It makes me so sick and it doesn't serve me. It was like making me more anxious. It was like, you know, I had found out that I had a bunch of black mold in my system from like a water exposed house at some point probably, and was trying to detox that. I was trying to get off all my prescription medication for my thyroid. And like, I just was on I don't know. I was on the most medication I'd ever been on and the sickest I had ever felt. And I'm just like, what is not serving me anymore? And alcohol was one of the first things to go. And I'd taken breaks, like I said, over COVID. I'd taken breaks from it before just because I am so sensitive to food and beverages and all of that stuff and just the inflammation and all of it. And I've never felt better than when I'm not drinking. And so when we started going out, you know, that second time, and that was the last second time, you know what I mean? He was like, well, I won't drink with you for a month. And we built our relationship on this foundation of just like both being sober and like learning about each other even more in that season.
Totally.
And, like, the support that I had from him, both in like joining me, but then accepting it and not making me feel bad for not drinking. I'd definitely been in situations before where they're like, you're more fun when you're drunk, or like, you know, those types of things. And I'm like, okay, that's not who I am all the time. So maybe we shouldn't be friends or.
I mean, because that speaks more to like the insecurity of that person than it does. But, and I mean, that's even such a small example, him saying that to his friend, but it spoke to so much more. Cause also alcohol and like when you're deciding to drink or not to drink, cause I don't drink much and sometimes I'm not drinking. Sometimes I am. It's just whatever I want to do. But when I get shit for it, I hate that specific industry has so much attached to it and so much like shame for not
people
participating.
Are like, why aren't you doing cocaine?
Yeah, exactly.
No one would question that.
No, or usually not.
But
then I started thinking about it. Actually, I was like, well, actually, I've had to go. Like, you're not going to blow down right now? I'm like, no.
Not for me. But
it's just a funny.
It is weird.
Societal thing. And I think the pendulum's swinging. I mean, people are like, oh, I like mushrooms. Oh, I like this. Oh, I like that. Like there's other alternatives and people are starting to question it more than just accepting it as like this like thing ingrained in our society and in tradition. But
I mean, the health industry, like people are experiencing all sorts of weird health issues more than they used to. And one of the first things I'll tell you to get rid of is alcohol. And it's a hard one because it's so socially acceptable. What do you do at happy hour? You grab a drink. What do you do when you get on the ski hill? You take a shot of tequila. Like, not too much, but you know what I mean? Like, safety first. But I had to learn that I didn't need to have an alcoholic beverage in my hand. I just needed something in my hand to like get through it. But it was sad that I felt like I needed that even to not be questioned while I was out, and that I didn't have an alcohol problem. I just it doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah, that's totally fine. And it shouldn't affect the other person either.
It was like a year though of getting used to that. Like being in certain settings, not tipsy or drunk. And then like you really realize you're like, okay, the crowd is turning and it's time for me to leave. Because I'm just not vibing anymore.
I'm going to excuse myself.
Yeah. But I mean, I felt very left out even when people would take shots together. And, like I wouldn't have one. And Ryan would always be like, make her a water shot. And make sure that I was like included. Yeah.
Because it is such a communal thing.
Yeah.
Or it can be. Like the feeling of sharing a drink.
It's weird. It's like it shouldn't feel like you're left out, but you do.
But you do. Yeah. No, I get that. But I think that's cool that he's so supportive.
And now I'm like, I don't need to do that. You guys have your shot.
I'm going to stand over here. I'll take a video of you guys.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's next for you? What's next for Link? Because I know you've got lots of changes coming.
So many changes. I am actually moving to Oklahoma, which is so insane. I have never in a million years, that has never been on my list. I actually ended up buying a house sight unseen, had never even been to Oklahoma. And the reason being like we were looking for places out in Breck and the cost of living has just shot through the roof. And it's just like, it's not sustainable anymore. And especially us both being business owners, like even in seasons where we're both doing really well, it's so unknown. And like, especially in my situation, I live by like, leaders eat last. Like I'm going to be the first to sacrifice and the last to feed myself. Like I never want my living situation to dictate what I'm able to give to the business.
Absolutely.
And, you know, as we go through a lot of changes and competition has risen and the economy's hit, like I kind of went through this season of feeling, I don't know if it was like shame's not the right word or jealousy, but just like, man, I had this plan. I was supposed to move to the mountains. Finally, I've been trying to for like 2 years. You know, Ryan and I were going to get a place together and like make our home and do all the outdoorsy things. And I mean, we already do that because he lives there, but like we don't live together. And when push came to shove, it was just, it didn't make sense anymore. And like, I've had to come to terms of like, just because everyone else is like maybe living their best life at times or like able to follow through with like the dreams that they had, it's just not the season for me right now. And that's okay. And like humbling myself a little bit to be like, okay, you're moving to Oklahoma. My sister lives there. Huge plus. Like she's going to live right down the street. And it's cheaper to buy a home. Like the mortgage and the rent for a year is less than rent in Denver
which
or
is insane.
Breckenridge for a year, which is so crazy. But I'm like, this is a responsible move. And
it
could
a
always
season.
come back. Yeah. But, you know, that might then create other shifts where we have a warehouse in Oklahoma and it's probably way cheaper to have a warehouse there than Denver.
Yeah.
So that's stuff that we're researching too. But as far as Link goes, you know, I feel like we're still just getting started, which is so exciting.
Well, you're just a baby.
Just a baby.
You're just a little baby.
And I mean, we've learned so much. We've tried so many different things. And like I said, I feel like we're really finding our identity and like what we want to lean into. And I think next, you know, right now, our current only stream of revenue is through linkers. And we really want to be able to support what we do on the linker side more, but then also, like I said, like give opportunities for people to be a part of the link community without having to come get linked or if you can't. And so doing a ton of e-com research, which I'm going to pick your brain about at some
I would
point.
love to help.
And then just really expanding on how we show up at these like bigger events that we're getting invited to be a part of.
Okay.
So we are, you know, we're ever taking applicants for linkers, and I'm really focused on maintaining a presence in the cities that we're already in versus like expanding into new cities or markets. But when the right person comes along, sometimes you're like, man, they could really crush it.
Yeah. And that's what it's all about is that person and carrying on the brand.
Yeah. So I think, you know, my move will help create a little work-life balance for me too. I've been doing this long distance relationship for a while, and Ryan's moving with me to Oklahoma with his hat business. And
which it will thrive.
Oh my gosh, the rodeo scene. Amazing.
Yeah. Are you kidding?
And he's, like you said, he's such a friendly guy. Like that man can make friends with anyone. And people leave feeling like they're his best friend. And it's one of my favorite qualities about him. But I'm also extremely social and like I need connection. And so I'm excited to meet a new group of people. I'm so sad to be leaving Colorado behind, but I'm like, oh my God, I could get my little wiener dog I've wanted for so long. And I can
You play house.
have a garden and like do crafts because I can have my stuff set up and like I can leave a easel and paint and all of that up because I'm in a home and I'm not
right. You don't have
jumping
roommates
between the office, my house, Breckenridge. I've been on the go for years.
Yeah,
so
you're probably ready to just like chill.
Ready to chill.
Yeah.
And excited to be closer to my sister. She's still in the business with me.
Cool.
You know, she's been a part of so much. She helped build our training program and she's played so many different roles in the business. But to be in person together to really like put our heads together on some things will be amazing. I don't know how you feel about working remote, but it's just hard when you don't get to be in person.
It is.
People.
It's really hard. I have an office in Atlanta and a full-time employee there. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's because I used to live in Atlanta. Okay. So we still have that portion of the business. And it's hard. I mean, we have calls once a week and we text every single day. But like I used to have my employees like come into the office with me every single day. Yeah. So just a different, like, totally. I think I want to eventually move everything out to Colorado. Well, depending on where I end up, you know, I'm still so like untethered. I'm like, I don't know where I'm going to be. So it's hard for me to like grow roots anywhere yet. Yeah. But I kind of have a feeling Colorado is going to be where I'm going to be. Yeah,
I know. There's something about it here. Like I hope to come back to, and you never know.
Yeah, you really don't. But I'm excited.
If I make it back and you're like moving your stuff, we could look into warehouse spaces.
Okay.
Split the cost.
I think you're going to come back.
I think so. We both love it. I mean, Ryan's been out here 18 years. I've been out here almost 9 and it's the best. Yeah. But everyone's like, you might actually love Oklahoma.
But you very well might.
I don't know. We'll see.
Well, when we were at the pop-up, there were those girls that were from Oklahoma City.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you ended up talking to them or if they talked to Ryan. But
I think they talked to Ryan.
Yeah. But they were like, no, Oklahoma City is like popping the fuck off.
It is. Yeah.
And I'm like, let's go.
So cheap.
Yeah.
Like just to live there is significantly less.
Which is crazy.
So I'm going to like that for sure.
Yeah.
We love to travel. So, you know,
you'll get to travel
more time and money for that. We have friends in Breck that are like, come stay at my house in February. Like, sick.
Yeah, we will. Yeah. If I have any rooms open up, I'll let you know. Yes, you can come crash.
Okay. We'd love that. Sleepover.
But this was so fun. Thank you so much for coming on. This was amazing. And your story is so cool. And obviously, I mean, you run an empire. And I also feel like you're more behind the scenes in the business.
Definitely.
So it's more of a faceless brand. So it's cool.
Yeah.
For everyone to get to know
you.
Everyone's
always like, you need to show up more. And I'm like,
you do.
So hard for me.
You do.
But
we could talk about that. I'll try to convince you to start posting some stories.
You can teach me your ways.
Okay.
Love it.
And then also before we go, where can everyone follow you on Instagram?
Yeah.
Your personal and business and website.
Link by Lou's Instagram is link, LINKX Lou, LOU. The X stands for by, and that's another thing. People are always giving our name.
Yeah, I forget.
A zillion versions.
Yeah.
Link by Lou. And then my personal is at Jordan X Lewis, LOUIS.
Beautiful.
And,
everyone
we've got
a
website and we've got all the things. So
fabulous. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Hope you enjoyed. Yeah. And we will talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys. And that is a wrap on this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. If this is your first time, I hope you stick around. We drop new episodes every single Thursday, anywhere you get your podcasts. If you like what you heard and you love us as much as we love you, we would love if you would leave us a little like, rating, or review anywhere you listen. You can also subscribe and get up-to-date info on all things Raw Intentions. You can follow us on Instagram at Raw Intentions Podcast, where we post things literally every single day. And you can always slide into our DMs. If there's something you want to talk about further on an episode you heard, have an idea of subject matter or a guest you'd like us to have on, we're always all ears and love hearing from you guys. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and have a fabulous weekend. I will chat with y'all next Thursday. See ya.